I have already attempted to burn down the boat, so this is still going to give me some warning. You know, a few turds worth of warning. It's so exciting. I'm so glad we did it. I'm Preston, sailing my 1988 Catalina 36 around the Pacific Northwest with my stupid cat. I have 3 teenagers and a few years left until freedom hits me like a rock in the face. Join me and my shenanigans as I learn the ropes and make plenty of mistakes, gearing up for the day I can sell all my crap and sail off into the sunset. This week has been super windy out along the coast, and since I can't go out and sail on that, we decided to take a trip out there, drive through Aberdeen, go out to Ocean Shores, and play in the wind for a little bit. And since we drove through Aberdeen, of course, I was forced to stop at a certain place for Nirvana's #1 fan. Olive doesn't believe that I am actually Nirvana's #1 fan. But the proof is in the pudding. The other day, I went down to the drum kit, which I almost never ever do anymore, popped in the Nevermind album, and man, I played that thing straight through almost flawlessly. I'm pretty impressed with myself that it's like riding a bicycle still. Okay, ready to turn around? Yeah. Are they? It's so exciting. I'm so glad we did it. I dare you, Olive. Go do it.
That'd be a good picture for Greg. Over there.
Maybe.
That'd be a great picture for
your knees. It's about 6 inches deep. Hey, Tristan. Run down there. Is there anyone down there? You look so statuesque. Okay. Down here on the floor, I'm on my knees. And I don't get on my knees. Oh, mother, please. Don't waste your love on me. I got a lot to learn. Sure love that kerosene. Suck my own 2 feet to watch them burn. Just to watch them burn. Smiling. It's so lame. Don't waste your love on me. I sing in tongues for dogs as I hit my lowest low. How many boat days do I get for this? The winter months around here is the time to do interior boat projects. As much as I love to go out and adventure, and I do that all year round, unlike everyone else around here, I'm like the only one that's ever out at anchorages. This week I installed water gauges on my water tanks and a gauge on the poop tank. I'm really tired of having deck turds. I wired in my hot water heater and finally installed correctly and nicely the 3 cheap battery monitors that I have. You know, this winter has been really lame. I'm really hankering for some boat adventures. I've got to get out there. I just haven't done it as much as I normally do. These tank gauges from SCAD, I'm not sure if I'm impressed yet or not. I've spent 3 days now trying to figure out why one of the sensors will not work. I got one response from SCAD very quickly. I ran through their steps, which I had already done. It didn't make any difference. I was getting an error code that the sensor was not getting enough voltage. It was all wired correctly. I did a ton of troubleshooting. I have not heard from them again. I sent them a video, I sent them pictures, and it's been radio silent. Okay, so I have just the gauge wired up right now. I had to find out which button I wanted to use back here, and I figured the best one is the cabin switch, because that's always on, because I always want the lights on. So I found which one that is. It's right there. So I'm just kind of daisy chaining, or whatever you want to call it, using the same node, whatever. So now, if I flip the cabin switch on, the gauge comes on. The Blackwater holding tank is encased in 3 wooden sides, which are fiberglass together lightly. So what I think I'm going to do is break the fiberglass on this wood here, break that off, and attach the sensor, and then instead of fiberglassing it back in, I might just use a couple 90-degree angle, I don't know what they're called, brackets, to reattach it. I think that's all I need it to be open. The short instruction booklet from SCAD says to clean very well the area of the tank that you're going to stick these sensors on, and you're supposed to use rubbing alcohol. It would not stick the first few times. I ended up scrubbing really hard, probably taking off a layer of that plastic with rubbing alcohol, dried it really well, and then I finally got this stuff to stick. I wonder if that's just because my tanks are so old. They're the originals. Doing this the right way and heat shrinking all the connections. I don't always do things the right way, but going to on this. Nothing on a boat is easy. It's not one of those easy projects. Have to run 3 wires from the sensor around there, follow these wires down there, and then it goes to the tiniest hole you can possibly imagine under the floor there. And unfortunately, Catalina, this is all one huge mold. Under this floor is nothing, it's just plastic. So you literally have to, I'm gonna have to use like this little wire, try to feed it through this little hole, find it over here, and then pull my wires through. Brutal. I got an extra cable there, that black one, with an eye on it. And over here, that's running under the floor. I'm going to take all 3 wires, red, blue, and black, and attach them to that, so I'm going to do this one freaking time, hopefully. What do you think the chances of that making it all the way through are? Holy cow. It actually did it. Wow. So, all the wires run out under there and up. And I can't reach from there down through here, so I have a red cable feeding down right there, twist tight to the end of this black cable, so I'm going to daisy chain and pull again. Running wire sucks in a Catalina. I don't want these wires to fall down while I'm wiring them. So, I'm going to be smart, which does not happen very often. There we go. So, someone might have noticed what an idiot I am. I taped the wires from the sensor on the tank up to the gauge on the outside of this hole. They need to be fed behind and through this hole. So I've already recut them. That's why you always leave yourself some extra. And I've cut out all my swear words. And now I don't need the tape. Alright, moment of truth. I'm going to turn the cabin lights on and see if that gauge lights up. Alright. I think that's all there is to it. When you touch it, it says it's empty. Which obviously, because the sensor is only halfway down the tank side. So when it finally starts to show some half, it'll still show empty. So from actual half full to full, it's gonna happen pretty quick. But I still like that more than just the sensors, the ones that just say a red light comes on, an alarm that says it's full. That's too late when it's full. So this is still gonna give me some warning, you know, a few turds worth of warning. I did forget one thing, to put the fuse in line. I don't think that matters because this is going through the main board back there, and that should all be fused. So I'll have to ask some people that, if that matters, but I don't think I need this. But if I do, that's a quick splice in. The center line port water tank, this one's gonna be the most difficult, I think. It is completely fiberglassed in. I don't want to take off this front wall. There's not a lot of space to work, but it's also gonna be very hard to chip and cut that out over there. But this back wall, and looking at it right here, it is only fiberglassed to the hole on the bottom and to this forward front corner. So I can just cut through the forward corner and the whole thing should kind of pull away, just like the holding tank just pulled away. And then I'm not destroying an entire wall, I'm just peeling it back to get my hands down there. And then my plan is, I'm gonna run the wires from that side over to the back, and under here is completely hollow. I'll drill a hole through there to feed the lines, and then they can, or the wires, and they can follow through here and follow the other tank's lines or wires up to the panel. Cutting knife is really stuck in there. I hate the smell of fiberglass. So it's, you know, there's an easier way to get into these things. I just don't want to destroy the whole thing, you know, and have to fiberglass the whole thing back together. So I'll prop this open, and that'll give me plenty of room with my hands to clean and attach the sensor. And actually, because I can get into that one better than I could the starboard tank, this one's gonna be more accurate because, like the holding tank, the starboard tank, there's like 5 inches below the sensor that I just couldn't reach. So when it starts, it's gonna read empty earlier than it should, but that just means we have a few gallons left over. It's early warning, I guess. This is not the best angle for showing this, but it's pretty much the best I can do right now. What's so stupid, I just realized this putting this video together. I'm spending all this time with a crappy lighter, heat shrinking all these connections with all this wiring. The entire time, I have a perfectly good heat gun on one of the shelves in the boat. Sometimes I'm a total idiot. I actually emailed SCAD, SCAD, the people that make these gauges, and they replied overnight. Had a reply waiting for me early in the morning, so that's pretty impressive. That is a rare thing nowadays, it seems like. The guy just had me do some steps, which I had already done, but I did them again. I just sent him a video and some pictures back, and now I'm waiting for his response. While I'm waiting, I'm going to finally cut some holes and install these little cheapy voltmeters for my batteries the right way. Because right now they're just stuck on. They're just stuck on with Velcro. So I've had these for a few years now. I'm gonna cut the holes, install all 3 appropriately. The engine one, the motor one, I just have down here completely out of the way, just because it was the easiest place and required the shortest amount of running wire. But I'm have all 3 of them up here after I'm done. So one of the sensors for the 2 water tanks suddenly started giving me an error during the setup process. I looked it up, the error is no voltage. It's all wired correctly. I did a ton of troubleshooting. They replied to my email 24 hours later, which I was impressed by. I replied to them with pictures and a video, and it's been radio silent for 2 days now. So my impressiveness is that the right word? It's waning. Anyway, I decided to just ignore the code, finish the wiring, complete it, and finish the calibration. Now it appears to be working randomly. So if you try these things and you get that error code, I guess just ignore it and finish the calibration. Look at my battery gauges behind me. They're the bright green ones. I tried to cut nice square holes with a jigsaw, and that's as nice as I could get it. It was so bad and messy. There were gaps and holes everywhere. So I tried to use wood filler and sand it and stain it, and that's as good as I got it to look, and it pretty much looked like a burn victim. So you'll see in the end, I actually ended up just cutting a gigantic big square and put a nice piece of stained wood over the whole thing. Starboard water tank is tank 1. You touch it and it's full. The centerline tank, tank 2, full. My poop tank is empty. Their steps in the book are not that clear. It does not say anywhere for these things to work correctly that you have to calibrate both empty and full in their booklet. On their website, it does. So what I did is I emptied the tanks, calibrated it at empty, then I filled them up, calibrated it at full, obviously. With the poop tank, don't tell anyone because I'm at the dock. It was already empty, so I calibrated it at empty. Then I filled it from the outside, the pump out, I filled it with fresh water so I could calibrate it to full. And then, because I'm lazy and it was really late at night, I just pumped that out, the whole thing right out. There was no chunks in there, it was just fresh water, you know, but it's still stanky. I pumped that all out at like midnight and verified it's working. It's an external sensor on these tanks with aluminum foil tape. It's really hard for me to believe these are really gonna work accurately. So I'll be pleasantly pleased and pretty surprised if it actually works. I haven't seen anyone use an external tank monitor like this, which tells me something. If these don't work, I'm actually thinking about using just a fuel tank float type on an arm for the water tanks, so I can see empty and full, which I think will be more accurate because these water tanks are quite tapered. They're full here, deep, and then going into the way back, they're pretty much triangular with that taper. So these external sensors, I think, are going to take a while to really register, and then at the very last minute they're going to suddenly drop down to getting close to empty, because it's always going to be full down here at the deep side. Even so, I might have half a tank, but because of the taper it's going to still show me full. Whereas if I had the arm type, and say I have it installed like toward the center here, with the float arm going toward the deep end, I think that will give me a better reading. Or maybe with the float arm toward the not so deep end, because that'll start going down first, and even though it still won't be absolutely perfect because these aren't square tanks, that'll give me a better reading on actually where the water level is. And by the time it hits the bottom, I'll still have a gallon or so in the deep end. Anyway, we'll see how well this works. You know, it was just shy of $500 for 2 monitors, a 2-tank monitor and a 1-tank monitor, and 3 sensors. So that's really not that bad if this actually works. Gauges are all nice for lazy and just to quick glance see them, but I would rather have a way to just dipstick check everything. But the fuel tank is totally sealed. There's no easy way to, unless I unscrew the the cap every time, to dipstick check it. And the water tanks where they are, having to move everything around off of them to get to them. I wish there was just a way I could float dipstick it like on Delos. The Maramoo, they just have a float dipstick. I think it's by their companionway where they can see their water level. That would be really nice. Also, nothing electronic that can just break. So I'm wiring the water heater. Last year we got a new one, and I'm wiring it back directly to the boat to a toggle switch. I've just been dealing with plugging it into the wall outlet, which kind of sucks. With an extension cord, it's not long enough. I have already attempted to burn down the boat because I'm stupid. Electrical stuff just makes absolutely no sense to me at all. And I wired in a switch. I was thinking I was smart. I wanted to get a light up switch so when it's on it lights up, so I don't forget to and leave it on accident without water going, or the tank's empty and leave that water heater on. So I figured a nice bright red toggle switch so it would light up when it was on. I would never forget it. I'd always notice it. So I went to the store and got a switch that lights up, and I plugged it in and shorted everything or whatever. Blew the main circuit breaker, and it took almost an hour for it to cool down enough to turn back on. So for that like 30-45 minutes, I was freaking out, wondering what the hell I had done. Anyway, it's because the switch was a 12-volt switch, and this the water heater is 110 volts or 115 volts. So now I have a non-light up 125 volt switch because there are no light up 125 volt switches. Because of my scale ready, I'm being extra cautious even though the switch is in the off position. I have it off of shore power. There's absolutely no power to this boat while I undo this and splice it all together and hope I don't fuck something up. At least I was smart and labeled that water heater. I'm just going to crimp these like normal and not heat shrink them because I'm going to heat shrink the entire outside of it when we're done. So I think heat shrinking the inside would just be overkill, not really necessary. See how corroded these wires are, the ends. So I'm going to cut quite a bit off and see if we can get down to some cleaner wire. So there's my splice. Shrink wrap, heat shrink in the middle, and then I overkilled on the edges. I did a bunch of wraps of electrical tape just because it made me feel good. I've got the toggle switch on, off, on. I sure wish it lit up so I knew it was working, but all the lights are on. I didn't blow anything, so it should only take 10-15 minutes for me to notice some hot water. So that's, I guess, when I'll know. But it sure is nice to have it back on a toggle switch because having to run it with an extension cord to a wall outlet just sucks, especially when you're trying to live on your boat for long periods of time. It just feels too much like camping. So having things on switches, no extension cords running around, just makes you feel better. It feels more like a home. I'm glad I didn't rebung hole. Rebung or whatever the screw holes. I took this off last time too when we put the new water heater in because I would have just destroyed them again. In fact, I don't think I'm ever going to cover those up. Can't even tell. No one's going to notice. And you end up getting into there all the time, so often enough to not do it. Pretty sure it's working. It's not a super cold day, but I'm pretty sure the water would have been colder. I didn't test it ahead of time, so I'm gonna treat myself to a cigar. A job well done. And By that time, we should be able to test it out. Nice and toasty like it's supposed to be. Pretty happy about that. I don't have all the gauges wired up yet, but that is way nicer looking than it looked before. I bought a cheap little Samsung tablet for 150 bucks. I'm gonna mount right there so I can finally use Navionics. Finally becoming one of the rest of you. I've been putting it off because I'm a real sailor and I can use paper charts and I can dead reckon. But I was playing with Navionics at home today and it is pretty good. So I'm one of you. I'm just trying to fit in.
A shot to the gut that was meant from my heart. I can't stop, won't stop seeing stars. The thought of your body still gets me off. It's all I know, it's all I want.
All of the voiceovers in this video, I had to do 3 times. Premiere has some really stupid keystroke in a certain sequence that deletes files straight off of your computer into nothingness, and no recovery program can recover them. It's mind-blowing. Whoever put that keystroke into this program should be flogged.